Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Yeah.
You know, these guys they'll use the bathroom and then wipe their hands on the towel, or, you know, it's just like, I'm sorry, folks, when you are sloughing off 400,000 cells a day,
right.
You, everywhere you go, you are leaving your DNA. And when you have sensitivities like what we're talking about, especially with DNA, but, you know, even fingerprinting and things like that, like, you know, there's a machine. I saw a presentation at the IAI conference that I was just at, and even if, like, on a shell casing, you know, when you're loading a magazine, you're pushing the bullets into the magazine, you're leaving DNA, and even if that shell casing has been in water. They can now, there's a machine now that can, it's a full system. It's like a little fuming hood, that piece of glass comes down, chunk, you know, I mean, it's really cool. It works.
Okay.
And, they can get your fingerprint off of that. And so any kind of metal composite, they can get fingerprinting, even if it's been sitting in the water for a long time.
And I don't know if it's that same technology, but our board of directors is funding a very similar case. Actually next week, that involves the firearm, the magazine, the whole 9 yards, you know, and the belief is that this is going to be a treasure trove here. We just got to get the right science, you know, to test it and all of that stuff. So it should be, it's pretty cool.
Let's go into the Rita Curran a little bit better. And so this case is actually really interesting. And we've got some more of this kind of information on our website. At mvac.com. But the interesting thing is, so Rita Curran I believe she was a school teacher, and she was 24 years old, and there was a guy named William DeRussy, and he lived 2 floors above Rita, and Rita had a couple of roommates, but these roommates went out to a bar or something, and Rita was just getting ready. Well, this guy, William DeRussy, he saw her through the window getting ready for bed, and she was wearing a robe and everything, and he was arguing with his wife supposedly, and there's all sorts of circumstances that goes into this. But the key is he breaks into her home, you know, molests her, and then and kills her. Well, he was also smoking, and so he left a cigarette butt next to her body, and the initial testing that helped solve the case was they got the DNA off the cigarette butt, but it wasn't a super strong profile. And then inbound with the Season of Justice, you guys helped fund the MVAC testing on that robe. And if you look at the strengths of the profile, so to give the listeners a little idea, so if you've ever seen a heart monitor where you got those blips, imagine a heart monitor that's kind of spread out, and it shows 24 heartbeats going at the same time. And out of those heartbeats, somebody has a specific signature that they send out, so that, you know, in say 10 or 12 of those locations, there's a specific heartbeat that goes in each one of those. It's called a loci. And that is how you identify Jared or Brad or anybody else. And each one of us has a specific signature that we send out. Well, that's on they developed that from a specific spot on the DNA strand. And it's just fascinating the way they do that. But when you have what's called a reference sample, which is like somebody can come in and they can take a Q-tip and do the inside of your mouth, is the best place to do it. If you have that, and then you compare it to what they find on the evidence, if it's a 1-to-1, man, it can be like 1 in 20 trillion that it's not, you know, Jared. And and when you get into those kind of specifics, it's like, Yeah, we're pretty sure that, that Brad was the bad guy
Yeah.
and he was the one out there, raping and murdering all these people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, that's this William DeRussy guy is just not a good character, but he, just a neighbor. And it's amazing how many victims, and it's super sad. I mean, this poor girl, 24 years old, she had her whole life ahead of her. She had no reason to be, there's just no reason. I mean, a second grade teacher, it's like, she wasn't doing it for the money, and she probably just loved kids and loved teaching, and was just trying to get on with her life. And it was that summer that she had moved out of her parents' home the first time, lived with some other roommates, and anyway, taking graduate courses at the University of Vermont, and murdered around midnight on July 19th in 1971. She was found strangled, beaten, and sexually assaulted. And, in a small town back in 1971, I lived there actually in the late 70s. So it would have been, 7 or 8 years after this, but I was just a little kid back then. And but I'm sure just, the repercussions of this just rippled through the entire community and just tore them apart.
Yeah.
Well, it went cold. Back then, they didn't have the technology to solve this, but thank goodness for organizations like you guys and like you said, technology that catches up to it. But they were able to, like you said, that cigarette butt was kind of the initial indicator, but the real nail in a coffin, if you will, was the much stronger profile that they got from the house code. So obviously he had just kind of ripped the house code open and in the process of raping her and strangling her. So fantastic, man. I'm just just what a blessing to have this season of justice around that was able to help solve that case.
Yeah. Well, no, that's I stutter because I get choked up just thinking about, each one of these, and they're all just so meaningful, but at the end of the day, it's as you've alluded to a couple times already, Jared, it's our donors that make this possible. We have donors that give to Season of Justice that are around the world. We have, we have donors in Cambodia. We have donors in Denmark. We have donors in Western Europe, and of course across the United States and in Canada and South America and stuff. And it's those individuals that want to see justice, want to help families find this resolution, that we are just, blessed to be trusted by these folks, as that charity of choice, as that trusted charity that, has those proven partnerships, with law enforcement, trusted partnerships with law enforcement, trusted partnerships with labs, so that we can help, again, bridge that financial gap, and help these families right along with, law enforcement and that stuff. And that's another thing, if you don't mind me, I would like to say is that one of the things and why, donating to Season of Justice, is so important is that, our commitment to law enforcement is we're not going to be talking about your case. When an investigative agency comes to Season of Justice to say, hey, we need help. We'd like to, have the MVAC done on this house coat, and, it's going to cost this amount of dollars and we can't afford that. Our commitment to that investigator and to that department, beyond the financial help that we're going to provide, is the fact that, there's going to be an NDA in place, that says Season of Justice, we're not going to talk about the cases that we're involved in. We're not going to go out and advertise. You're not going to see us on social media. We're not going to do those types of things, because the absolute last thing that we want to do as an organization is to mess up an investigation. Provide.
But you're specifically talking about while the investigation is happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
while those,
we're kind of the same way. There's so many agencies use the MVAC. They're like, hey, we're ordering more supplies for obvious reasons.
Right.
Can't tell you why. And we're like, you know what? I mean, even if you did tell us why, we couldn't talk about it anyway. And I mean, there was
exactly.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. One of the first cases we helped work in Southern Florida was in 2014.
Mhm.
And it took 8 years for that thing to get adjudicated. And so we couldn't really talk about it for 8 years. We
Right.
kind of knew what had happened,
Mhm.
but and why they had used it. Uh,
Right.
and I mean, not the specific results, but I mean, whenever a detective is smiling when you mention a case, that's a good
Right.
sign.
Right.
And the,
Right.
the detectives were like, "Yeah, good things. We're just waiting for it to go to trial." And 8 years. I was like, "Oh
Right.
my gosh, really?"
Absolutely.
It's like
Absolutely.
one of our, and that was when we were just getting started in forensics. I was like, "Man,
Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
you're killing us. Throw me a bone, man."
Well,
But they couldn't.
yeah.
They were going to trial, and it was just taking forever. And so, but it finally got adjudicated, and that was
Mhm.
actually a brutal murder down in South Florida. And the evidence that they got from it was from a cinder block, basically, and it
Oh,
was,
wow.
yeah, it's crazy. So
Yeah.
touch DNA from like a cinder block. And
Mhm.
anyway, yeah, we can talk about that case later. But the
Yeah.
bottom line is, you guys, I'm positive you're the trust level between you
Mhm.
and your donors and the victims'
Mhm.
families and the law enforcement agencies is just rock solid. And it has to
Yeah.
be. I mean,
It does. It
yeah,
has to be. We work every day to maintain that on all levels,
right.
so.
So, hey, quick question:
Mhm.
can the donors? I don't know if
Mhm.
this is even possible, but if the donors have a specific case in mind, can
Mhm.
they donate specifically to that, or is it just
No.
kind of going to a general fund?
No, it goes into a general fund that supports all of our grant making. The vast majority of our grant making goes to our DNA grant programs, but we do also have an awareness campaign grant process that we have where we work with families, of murdered and missing individuals that the cases have gone cold, and again, working alongside and with law enforcement, it's been determined that a media campaign, a billboard, some geo netting, some Google types of techie types of stuff, maybe newspaper ads, those types of things, a mass media push. It has been determined that it might shed new light. Well, it of course will shed new light on a case, but it may bring some new leads to an investigation that's gone cold. And so, for our donors, basically, we're asking them just to give to our general fund.
Hmm.
We review cases for the DNA grant program once a month, and our board of directors approves all of those grants. And then we do a one family grant per month where we're working with the family, somewhere here in the United States to help shed new light on their case. And
Hmm.
again, as I said, bring awareness, to their situation in coordination with law enforcement.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know a lot of people, especially if it's in their community or a neighbor, or, brother or sister that
Hmm.
they know. Sometimes they want to donate to that specific case, but it, there sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, sometimes you review the case and you're just like, oh, you know what, technology just isn't right for this. And that's
Hmm.
and boy, to backtrack onto my previous thought, the third phase of DNA is
Yeah.
actually the interpretation.
Hmm.
That's where there's leaps and bounds being made right now with the interpretation of it, because
Yeah.
DNA is so complicated. And if you have too many people that have touched the doorknob, for example,
Hmm.
and so when you sample that doorknob, you get 10 people. Well, currently you can't do anything with that. But hopefully in the not too distant future, there will be technology that they'll be able to kind of unmix that
Right.
mixture of
Yeah.
all
Those mixtures.
people.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Yeah.
that's mixtures are actually the biggest problem. So,
Hmm.
and to give everybody that's listening maybe a little better idea of what a mixture is. So imagine, we'll go back to the heart monitor.
Yeah.
Imagine 20 people in a hospital all hooked up to the same heart monitor. And so everybody's heartbeat is being in there and it's all
Right.
gibbered together. And so,
Right.
the doctor would look at that and go, I don't know whose heartbeat is whose. And so
Right.
that's kind of what happens in DNA profiles. And so there are algorithm type of software basically that they can plug the signatures into. And right now, I think the capability is 5 to 7, somewhere around there, that they can kind of separate and look into. But hopefully in the very near future, they're looking at 10, 12, more. So
thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.